How many of you have decided sometime, whether it's a New Year resolution or just sometime in the past, that you are going to do something differently from now on? How many of you are doing the thing that you intended to do? Some of you, yay.
I'm 5 days into it.
5 days. Fair enough. Yeah, we'll take it. We'll celebrate with you. Isn't it funny how we have these wonderful intentions that aren't limited to New Year's by any means, but often New Year's is the time that people decide that they want to try something different. They want to approach things differently. We had a white stone ceremony last week that invited you to consider a new aspect of yourself for yourself to expand into this week, into this year. And sometimes the hardest part is sticking with it. It's funny how the intentions get sidelined. They get sidelined perhaps because of the weather changing, or an unexpected phone call, or somebody needs something and it takes precedence, and then you kind of fall off the path. My favorite story about this is my own experience of deciding I was going to go swimming every day. And I started with about 6 laps. Not a huge number, but enough to get your heart rate going. And it felt great to be in the water. And about day 4 or 5, I'm like, I could probably do a little bit longer. So then I did 8 laps. And then 10 laps. But then I noticed that I was taking a much longer time at the pool. And what did I do? Go back to 6? No. I just stopped going. How do we move from these resolutions, these resolves that we have to do something, and then find ourselves sidelined in various ways? It's actually an ancient problem, if you will. We find this really, really neat verse in the book of Romans, in which Paul effectively says, I do not understand what I do. What I want to do, I do not do. What I do not want to do, I keep doing. We laugh because we can relate. We find ourselves promising ourselves we were. Next time so-and-so says this, I am going to not respond. The next time this button that I have, that I own, gets pushed by this behavior by someone, I'm going to do something differently. And before we know it, we're right back into our own pattern, old pattern. How do we change? How do we shift from these patterns that we know we want to move away from, but find ourselves at times kind of trapped into? That is the question for today. Statistics say that 80% of people abandon their resolutions within 3 months. So we're not alone, this room. In fact, if some of you have managed to last longer than that, that's fabulous, because you're actually beating the average. What I find is a teaching of Jesus's that is 27 words long, depending on the translation, is the best description for handling change that I have ever seen. This is what he says. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth onto an old cloak. The patch pulls away, and a worse tear is made. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth onto an old cloak. Why? Eventually that patch will shrink. It will tear at the seam, and we end up with something that's more harmful than what we had before. Imagine the wisdom of this. The times that we say we're going to go on a diet and we lose all the weight that we intend to lose, and then we think, okay, diet's over. The patch shrinks. A worse tear is made. Because often, not only do we come back to our original weight, but we exceed it. And that's just one example of the wisdom of the saying. Imagine this then. The patch is the new thing that we want to integrate. The cloak is who we are now and what our lifestyle is now. It could be what the status quo is in an organization. The patch works when a new person comes into an organization. It works when a new person comes into our community here, for example. That all of us who know each other and have kind of figured out who we are the old cloak, the status quo. And a new person can come in, and if we aren't prepared for that new person to welcome them in a way that makes them feel welcomed, isn't it true that that person might decide to leave and say nasty things about us not being inclusive, as an example? That's not in my notes, actually, I digress, but it just popped into my head that this is an example of where the worst tear can be made. So think of the patch as the new thing that we want to bring into our existing framework. We want to create a newly patterned cloak. It could be a new habit, a new way of responding, a new belief, or, as I mentioned, this new person coming into a situation, a new government coming into a situation, a new policy being imposed. The new is going to change the pattern. The cloak is the established pattern, the established status quo. It's the people who know each other. It's this is the way we do things. It is the history, if you will. And it is our established habits personally. The thing about that cloak, that established pattern, is it may have little holes in places. It may even be like completely threadbare in places, but it's familiar. It's like having that cozy blanket that anyone else would look at and go, that should go in the garbage. And you're like, no, it's my comfort. So that's our cloak. It is what we know, what we're comfortable with, warts and all. And now in comes this new thing, this new person, this new idea, this new habit that you want. And somehow you are wanting this new thing to become part of your existing framework because it's actually desired. I mean, nobody goes on a diet because they want to, for God's sake. How do we do it in a way that doesn't tear at what's already there? That doesn't throw out the good and the comfort of what's already there? That's where Jesus says, no one does this. No one puts a new patch onto an old cloak. Well, I have to gently disagree with him. One of the few places where I'm like, no, Jesus, I know where you're going with this, but you're making the assumption that we're all good tailors, and we're not. Because what we see is that we throw these new patches onto our coats often, but often without enough thought, without shrinking and maturing them so that they actually fit. This is a two-way street, though. If we think about any change, we always think, our tendency is to think about the new part, the new diet, the new exercise regime, the new whatever it might be, the new bright shining object that's going to add interest to our patterned coat. Great. But change doesn't happen in a vacuum. The patch is just the patch. It needs to be incorporated into the coat. So there is a two-way relationship. And I sometimes think we forget that. Let's pretend for a moment that we're looking at a change. Let's take the swimming example. Now, if I wanted that to be my new patch, and I wanted it to be a sustainable patch, then I need to think about the coat in which it's going to fit. And the coat includes my available time, the other things that I am responsible for and responsible to, the people I'm responsible to, and how they might relate to this change, and what are the implications for them. Then what I realize is that for the coat, which includes not just me, but all of the people that are part of my complex life, that all needs to be smoothed out. We actually need to make room for the patch. And to make room for the patch, it helps to think in terms of, as a leader, I'm going to expect tension. It doesn't matter if everyone is on board with a change. As leaders in our lives, whenever we introduce a change, let us expect that there will be a little tension. There will be a little, how is this going to affect me? Well, normally you do this at this time, but now you're doing that. What does that mean? So as leaders of our lives, as the tailors of our lives, can we take our coats and before we put in the patch, can we lay the coat out and stretch it a little, making room for where the patch will go. To do this, it really helps as a tailor to begin with the end in mind. What do you want your cloak to look like? And one of the best ways to do that I have found is to use the words, I am. This cloak, imagine it saying, I am. I am a spouse, a grandma, a minister, a wedding officiant, a this, a that, and a swimmer. I gotta fit that patch into my cloak. Not, I'm going to be a swimmer. That's kind of a wishy-washy patch. 3 frogs are sitting on a lily pad and one of them decides to jump in. How many are left? 3. Because the difference between decision and acting is the difference between I'm going to be a swimmer and I am a swimmer. I know, sorry, Judy. But the idea of I am means that you are now placing that into an intentional part of your cloak. You're changing the pattern, you're transforming that cloak. And so begin with that end in mind. What do you want it to look like? And expect the tension. Stretch enough to make room for that new thing. It may mean that other parts have to be rejigged. They have to be discussed with family members or aligned differently, or something else might actually have to literally drop off the plate. Think of that before. And don't be surprised when you notice the temptation to go back to the way it was, because that's the pattern. What if you're the new thing? What if it's a new idea now, or a new item that you're considering purchasing, or you're the new person coming in to a group of people who are pretty comfortable with who they are and who they know and so on? And how does it feel then? Go slow. Mature that patch. It means also expecting some tension. Expecting that things are going to be a little squishy at times. We've all seen it in our experiences where we've got a workplace, for example, and then a new manager comes in or even a new co-worker comes in, and you can see them on the outside trying to figure out how to get onto the inside. And depending on what your image is for that workplace or that community, the old patch, the old coat, will have systems in place that say, come on in. And the systems might simply be, hey, I see you're sitting by yourself. Come sit with us. But when you're the new person, or you have a new idea, or you're trying to create a new habit, a new behavior, then recognize that it's going to take a little bit of time. It's not going to happen overnight, and it doesn't mean that you need to give up. It's Voltaire who said, don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. I get that right? Yeah. Do not let the perfect. But don't wait for things to be perfect. Perfect's an idea. Perfect is you are here with this intention to become a swimmer. Let's make that happen. Well, I don't have the right spandex bathing suit. You got an old junky one and it fits, get in there. Be what you imagine. And don't wait for all of the planets to align to make it so. Because they won't. Or they may. But in the meantime, you're losing the opportunity to change your cloak and make it interesting and beautiful and dynamic and all the things that you're longing for. And watch that tendency to go in all the way. So much so that you've left other parts of your cloak going, what the heck just happened to them? Imagine, deciding that you're going to eat healthy, so your fridge is now filled with like kale and carrots. And you've got teenagers who where are the Pop-Tarts? Figure out a way so that it becomes sustainable. No one sews a new patch onto an old cloak. Either you shrink the patch and it becomes a mature idea, or you stretch the cloak out so that there is space for that new idea to take hold. And if you don't do those two things, it's not actually or, it's an and. If you don't do both of those things, then what's going to happen is, in the case of the Pop-Tarts and the kale, you're going to have a really upset teenager who's going to have some sort of explosion at you, and very likely it'll create some anger. A worse tear is made. I go from 6 to 8 to 10 laps to 0 laps. A worse tear is made. When you start to see it, you will see this type of thing happen all the time. We see it in policies out in the world all the time, where unintended consequences happen because an immature patch is put on existing frameworks. And then something happens that nobody thought about, and a worse tear is made. When you are expecting change, expect tension. It's built in. That doesn't mean we need to be afraid of it. What it means is that we account for it as a wise tailor would. We take the existing and we lay it out. Stretch it out a little bit, make space for the new. And then the wise tailor takes the new idea and matures it, cures it, shrinks it if necessary, so that when the integration happens between the new and the old, it is seamless. That's our goal. As you look at your life and you look at new ideas that you're wanting to integrate, as you look at your life and you see new people coming into your family or your circle of friends, think about what end you have in mind. What do you want your cloak to look like? If you're part of the old cloak, stretch, reach out to that new idea. And if you're the new idea, or you have a new idea, expect the tension, don't be surprised by it, and move slowly to make connections. Don't go all in and then burn yourself out. A worse tear will be made. Handle with care. You are worth it. Your cloak is worth it. And the patch and the vibrant new life that you're wanting to create in that patch is absolutely worth it. So with any change, expect tension, stretch, mature, handle with care.